probably ancient Athens' most famous tribunal, the Areopagus hill behind me still stands over the city. It was, according to the legends, of course, the very first tribunal in world's history, and the opening act for this tribunal was none other than the trial of a murdering god. The accused in this first trial was the slayer of men, the stormer of cities, the most despised of all the gods, Ares, god of war. You would think that for a god of war, murder came with the territory. After all, you cannot have a battle without, unfortunately, killing someone. But it was not killing in battle that landed Ares on a trial. It was something different. It was a revenge killing done to protect the honor of one of his daughters. But before we delve into that story, let's get to know Ares a little bit better. The god of war, the slaughterer, the bloody one, as he was known. War is never that simple, and the Greeks understood it. That is why they split it between two gods. Athena was the just war, strategy, defense, and necessity. Ares represented the slaughter, chaos, violence, and the sheer pleasure of killing. Athena never liked war. Ares reveled in it. The ancient Greeks prayed to Athena to win the war. They prayed to Ares to stay out of it. Ares was feared, not loved. And if building him a temple and sacrificing to him meant that he stood very much out of your way, that it was worth the investment. Not even his family seemed to love him. His parents, Zeus, the king of the gods, and Hera, his sister and wife, could barely stand him. Sure, he was beautifully built, like a living classical sculpture, but he wasn't exactly the sharpest spear in the armory. He was probably the walking, talking cliché of all brawn and no brain. You don't believe me? Then let me tell you a story. Meet the Aloade, Otus and Ephialtes, two 9-year-old giants 16.5 meters tall. They wanted to conquer Olympus, and to do so, they needed to defeat Ares. If you're imagining a big duel, think again. The giants simply overpowered the god of war. They bound Ares in unbreakable chains and stuffed him into a bronze jar meant for storing grain. For 13 months, Ares withered inside that jar, starving, screaming, his spirit completely broken. He would have perished, but the giant's stepmother, Erybeia, snitched to Hermes. Maybe she was wary of the wrath of the Olympians if they discovered they had taken one of their own. Maybe she was tired of hearing Ares scream his lungs off.
Oh, gods! Gods, I can't take any more of this!
In any case, she told Hermes. He pulled a heist and dragged the barely conscious Ares out of the pot and back to Olympus. Apparently, for those 13 months, not one single god in Olympus had realized that Ares was missing. They probably thought it was unusually quiet or something. At least in the love department, he was a little more fortunate. He loved and was loved in return by the goddess Aphrodite. They look good together, don't they? But Zeus had other plans. Sick of all the fools fighting over the goddess of beauty and trying to make amends for tossing Hephaestus off Olympus, he gave Aphrodite to the smith. But the heavenly goddess did not want the lowly smith. She had set eyes on someone else, the manlier Ares. And so the affair began. But no one can hide from the sun. Helios, the sun god, spotted the lovers and immediately told the husband. Hephaestus knew he couldn't defeat the god of war in a duel. So he went to his forge and started to build a trap. He fashioned a net of gold, threads so fine they were invisible to the naked eye, like spiderwebs, yet unbreakable. He raked them over the bed and then set the bait. He announced he was leaving for the island of Lemnos. Ares watched him go. Thinking the coast was clear, he rushed to Aphrodite. But the moment they lay down on the bed, the net fell. Stopping at that would have been humiliation enough, but Hephaestus went further. He revealed himself and threw open the doors of the bedchamber so that the entire Olympus could come and laugh at the spectacle. In one single moment, the mighty Ares was reduced to the laughing stock of the entire Olympus. Okay, so far Ares seems easily duped, both in and out of the bed. But surely, at least in war, he commanded respect, right? Think again. Take the Trojan War, the greatest conflict in mythology. Not even the gods escaped choosing sides on that one. Ares should have been on the Greek side. It was what he had promised his mother. But Aphrodite tempted him to the Trojan side, and off he went, like a lost puppy. As he was mowing down soldiers left and right on the battlefield, Athena, staunch defender of the Greeks, decided to intervene. Standing beside one of the Greek heroes, she guided a spear so that the bronze tip drove straight into her hot-headed brother's gut. As soon as he registered the pain, Ares screamed. Homer writes that he bellowed so loud as 9,000 men screaming in battle. A sound so terrifying that both armies stopped fighting in fear. Well, so much for a being who was supposed to revel in the blood. Evidently, only when it wasn't hit. In a fury, Ares disappeared from the battlefield back to Olympus, whining to his father about his crazy sister. And then Zeus delivered what was probably the most hurtful blow of all, with words alone.
Do not sit beside me and whine, you double-faced liar. To me, you are the most hateful of all the gods in Olympus.
So all in all, Ares is probably not that big, heroic character that we had in mind. But maybe this makes him a little bit more relatable. Don't you think? But back to the story at hand. So what did Ares do to actually end up at the first murder trial of history? Well, believe it or not, he was acting like a good and proper father. At least by the ancient Greek standards. He had a daughter named Alcippe with one of the princesses of Athens. And one day, Alcippe was at a fountain underneath the Acropolis, taking a bath. Halirrhothius, son of Poseidon, happened upon her and, without her consent, raped her in the middle of the day. Alcippe cried for help, and Ares heard. He manifested himself down to earth and killed Halirrhothius on the spot to avenge Alcippe's ruined honor. Halirrhothius was the son of Poseidon, and the god of the seas did not appreciate the god of war suddenly killing his offspring. And so Poseidon called for justice. Outright war was not an option. Even despised, Ares was an Olympian, and Zeus would not condone a civil war. It was Athena who proposed the alternative. She, the goddess of justice, had been toying with a new idea. A court of law, a place where criminals could be judged. And what better way to test this new idea than with a blockhead of a brother? She chose the rock in front of her seat of power. And there, the 12 Olympians descended. The trial of a god could only have a divine jury. On the Areopagus, with the gods as the jury and Athena as the judge, Ares and Poseidon came forward and presented their case. Poseidon clearly wanted Ares, if not dead, because he was still an immortal god, at least exiled from Olympus. And Ares kept saying that he had every right to kill Halirrhothius for the insult he had done to his daughter Alcippe. Now, by modern standards, Ares is guilty. Even if the provocation is horrific, One cannot simply execute someone without a trial. That is vigilante justice. That is murder.
But in ancient Greece, especially in the myths, the concept of justice was a little different. As the head of the family, a man had the legal right to kill any aggressor caught in the act of violating a female member of his family.
In the end, Athena decided that Ares was innocent. Sure, he had killed Halirrhothius, but that had been an act of sanctioned revenge in order to restore Alcippe's honor.
So the trial was done. Ares was free to go. Even violence had its code of honor.
History remembers this trial. It's in the name of this hill, which I will try to pronounce correctly for once in this video. Areopagus Hill, the Hill of Ares.
The legacy is so strong that the name never died. Even today, the Supreme Court of Greece is officially called the Areopagus. On this rock, after Ares, many stood trial. According to our ancient vlogger Pausanias, there is a stone upon which the accused stands, and the prosecutor stands on the other. The one is named the Stone of Outrage, the other the Stone of Ruthlessness.
Before you go looking for them, they are unfortunately gone.
Lost to time, erosion, or the thousands of feet that have walked here since.
But the name remains, and with it, the knowledge that even a god can be judged